All right. Hello, everyone. Again, this is Dennis Horrigan. I am a partner at Connecticut Wealth Management. I have with me Kevin Leahy, who is partner, president, CEO of Connecticut Wealth Management. And we have, for round two, we have Jay Sattler. Jay is a partner in charge of tax at Blum Shapiro in West Hartford and many, many other locations. Jay, we're psyched to have you back. The feedback we got on the first one of these conversations we had with you was great. So you're very popular amongst the 5 or 6 people that watch these things.
Welcome back. Good morning. Appreciate you having me back. Look forward to connecting again.
Awesome. So a lot has happened since we first spoke. The first time we spoke was actually before the initial distribution of the PPP loans. So what is going on with your clients? What are they asking for? What is keeping them most concerned these days?
Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. So I think when we last talked, we were in that phase of helping clients understand eligibility, qualifications, how the math works, how you compute payroll costs, and just getting them geared up to complete and submit their applications. There was some initial success in terms of applications being approved, but I think as we all know, on a national basis, the volume of applications, I think, far exceeded anyone's expectations from the SBA mindset, and the system just really bogged down, and the funding just evaporated, I think, within probably 48 hours. So there were a few clients here and there that did get their applications in within that small, short window. Their applications were approved. In some cases, there was actually a little bit of funding taking place. But what's really happened as of late, as everyone probably knows, Congress came up with another, I think, $350 billion of additional funding. As of this past Monday, they reopened that application window. And we've actually heard a lot of promising feedback in terms of loans being approved through the banks and then subsequently by the SBA. And once the loan documents have been reviewed and signed by the business community, funds have been received within 48 hours. So there's been, I would say, a fairly heavy volume of business clients or businesses in the community that have now completed that application process and have been fully funded. And actually, I would say in almost every situation, the application was approved dollar for dollar with what they computed in terms of their qualification, and the funding has been received also dollar for dollar. So, knock on wood, it's kind of come full circle, and there's been a lot of success stories being shared to date. The question is going to be, where do we stand now, and what's going to happen in the next week or two as additional businesses that are still in the pipeline, or maybe some that haven't even applied yet. Where are they going to fall in this process, and where do the funds stand right now?
Yeah. So Jay, so thank you. Great info and certainly cause for optimism.
Right.
I sense that you guys, from you've put out some great materials. Blum Shapiro has. I'm sensing that you've, to a certain extent, maybe at least, transitioned to helping clients, helping companies and people figure out how to ensure that their loan will be forgiven, or at least understand what portion of it. Is that fair to say? And how's that?
I would say that's an exact representation of where we stand right now. And you're right. We have a COVID-19 resource center that we put together, and they've really digested not just the SBA lending issues, but payroll tax credits and all the other legislation that's come out. But you're right, in terms of where we are, I would say as of this week, we've really transitioned from eligibility, qualification, funding to now, what's the next step? And the next step is, now that those funds have been received or the loans have been approved, how do we manage the next 8 weeks for that critical time period where you have to do the testing, which all directly feeds into how much of that loan may or may not be forgiven. And there's a few very important drivers in that calculation. So we're really trying to put a lot of commentary around what those issues are, and starting to talk to those clients and those businesses about what that guidance is.
Jay, can you spend, I know you could probably run a full day seminar on this and there'd still be questions at the end, but can you
Right.
spend, kind of it's big picture, kind of what those issues are and
Sure.
what what people might stub their toe on if they're not careful?
Yeah, sure. So let me just give you, because you're right. There's a lot of nuances to it. Let me preface it first by saying that this past Monday, we were waiting for additional guidance to come out to define some of the very complicated forgiveness elements. That guidance has not come out yet. Just going based off of the guidance that we do have, there are two primary drivers. There's a host of drivers in the forgiveness calculation, but there are two very critical drivers that the businesses really need to understand and be mindful of during this calculation window, which right now is the 8-week period of time beginning with when they receive the funds. Okay, now that is open for discussion. That's part of the guidance we're waiting for. But those two drivers are simply, I say simply, it's not simply, but they are simply, number one, the amount of dollars the businesses spend on payroll during this 8-week testing period, or for lack of a better word, I'll just call it this testing period that's coming up. It's the amount they spend in payroll relative to what they typically spend in payroll. So it's comparing payroll during the testing period with what their payroll typically needs to be or typically has been. And they're giving you a few windows of time as to when you can, as to what payroll you can compare it to in the past, whether, this period from last year, maybe a more recent period. So there's a few complexities there, but it's the amount that businesses will be spending in terms of the dollar amount during this testing period. The second most important driver is the number of full-time equivalent employees that businesses are going to have, again, during this testing period going forward, whether it's 8 weeks or whatever that period ends up being. It's that headcount going forward compared to their baseline during the application process. So those two drivers, if there's a drop in dollar spend on payroll or other qualifying costs, rent, utilities, debt service, or there's a drop in your headcount of employees, those two factors can significantly impact the forgiveness eligibility and cause a greater proportion of the loan to be repaid.
So are there ways that folks should be tracking this? Are there official methods by which they should be tracking the dollars spent and the headcount?
Yeah, good question. We're hearing that a lot. I think that's more of a philosophical question. At the end of the day, the businesses are going to have to substantiate what they use the funds for, right? They're going to have to provide payroll returns. They're going to have to provide, accounting records and invoices for rent and utilities and debt service. So you're going to have to support it in terms of documentation, one way or the other. But the philosophical question is,
to the bank, they're going to have to provide that to the bank?
As of right now, we believe that there's going to be a whole other application process to compute your forgiveness with supporting documentation, and that's likely going to go to the bank, that they would probably have to review, make sure it meets certain SBA approved standards, if you will. And then I think at the end of the day, the SBA will be the ones who approve the calculation. But I think it's first going to go through the bank for their first tier review, if you will. But the philosophical question is, is there an appropriate way to mechanically track the funds? I'm not sure it matters, to be honest. We're sort of settling on two approaches. One is to have a separate bank account for you to deposit the loan proceeds into. And then on a weekly or biweekly basis, as you incur payroll, as you pay your rent, utilities, debt service, you compute that amount of money, transfer it from your proceeds account, if you will, into your operating account, and then meet your payroll requirement. The other is to just put the money directly into your operating account where you routinely pay all of those bills. I'm not sure mechanically it's going to make a big difference because you have to support it with underlying documentation anyways, but for purposes of having a more efficient process to easily track it, I think it's probably more of a comfort level, business by business. But I think those are the two primary options.
So, Jay, I know this is probably a silly question and at a minimum an unfair one to boil all this down to one piece of advice, but always like to try to come up with a practical bit of advice. Is there a particular thing that you think people should focus in on as it relates to this?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would say understand what the issues are, understand what the complexity is, but I think, in my opinion, that the number one most important issue businesses need to be mindful of, in this case, on the forgiveness side, timing is everything. Timing is everything. So, again, it all comes down to this testing period and when that clock starts. So, if a business is not mindful of how much they're going to spend in that 8-week period on payroll, rent, utilities, debt service, and they don't start to address it until week 3 or 4, they have just missed 50% of that qualifying time period to make sure you're properly capturing those costs.
So kind of like, sorry to interrupt you, but I think what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is kind of like people that try to do tax planning after December 31st.
That's
is
right.
Coming on. There's not a whole lot you can do.
That's right. And it gets even more complicated. That's a great analogy. And it gets even more complicated for those businesses who have been subject to the stay-at-home order. They've had layoffs, they've had furloughs, and now they're going to make those decisions about, putting aside when we start to reopen and all of that. But at what point do you start to reopen your business, start to bring your employees back, and start to incur payroll? Well, that's directly going to impact the forgiveness calculation. So if you're not addressing that, again, putting aside the stay-at-home order, but if you're not addressing that until week 5, 6, or 7, you've just missed a significant portion of this calculation window. And that's actually one of the key issues that we're waiting for the guidance that was supposed to come out on Monday to confirm. And one of the issues that I've been anxiously waiting for them to adopt, and the AICPA just recommended this as a key issue as well, and hopefully it will be adopted, is that they need to review this 8-week testing period, right? Because right now the guidance says, hey, if you get your money on day 1, right, which let's say that was April 1st, your 8-week period starts right then and there. Well, we're all subject to a stay-at-home order. Businesses are closed, businesses are shut down, employees have been laid off, all while that testing period is going on. So really what should be happening, and those are really the businesses that really need the forgiveness too. So really what should happen in my mind and the AICPA's mind is they need to delay the start of that testing period to when the business actually has a chance to reopen and to start to refill those staffing needs and those payroll costs. Otherwise, I think it's counterproductive to what we're actually trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Jay, the rollout of this program has been, well, it's an unbelievably huge program that they kind of crafted virtually overnight, and
right.
As to be expected, it hasn't worked completely seamlessly. There's been some hiccups. Do you sense that there might be another round of funding? Do you think there's going to be some more help for business owners?
Yeah, sorry, I was getting a fair amount of feedback there. I think you were asking if there's going to be another round of funding coming. I think that's certainly possible. I know there are discussions taking place at Congress in terms of, I think I would call it phase 3 of a stimulus package, whether it's additional funding, whether it's additional tax legislation. I think there probably will be another round, whether it's within the same umbrella, whether it's more industry specific, whether it's specific to first line responders, or more in terms of a legislative guidance and tax reform. Everyone now has a chance to kind of put their 2 cents into the ring. So I think there will be another phase to this. I think it's probably just going to have a different look and feel to it. but I do think more will be coming.
Good. Can you hear me now?
I can, yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. As Kevin said, Jay, I know that we could sit here all day long and ask questions, and we still wouldn't get to all of them. So thanks for spending a little bit of time with us, although it was brief. I have a feeling we'll be talking to you again soon. This is awesome information, and the idea behind all these is to try to provide some information to our business owner clients and friends, so that they can navigate their way through this this whole pandemic situation. And I know we at Connecticut Wealth Management appreciate your friendship and your advice, and I know that our clients are appreciating it too. So
Yeah,
thank you so much. Stay well too, Jay.
yeah, thank you. Happy to be of help. I know there's a lot of information out there, but if folks need a little bit of extra guidance, as I'm sure most firms have, we have a fair amount of information, very helpful information on our website. I would encourage people to access that. We have helpful toolkits to help with these forgiveness calculations. They're welcome to download that as well. And happy to connect with you guys, and look forward to round 3.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Take care.